So imagine this. You built the house, you paid the mortgage, you fixed the roof in the freezing rain while everyone else was sleeping.
Right. It's a very vivid picture.
Yeah, and then, now you're being told to leave because your presence makes her uncomfortable.
It's a profoundly jarring image to start with. Really sets the tone.
It really is. But, I mean, according to the source material we're examining today, this isn't just some rhetorical exaggeration, right? It is the literal legal reality for millions of men.
Exactly. It's not a metaphor for the author. It's the baseline reality.
Right. So today we are reviewing a highly provocative, unapologetic new ebook. It's called Tits On A Bull, The Ass-Backward State of Feminized Men and Chimpanzees by Sophie Marie Eve Riker.
Quite a title, yeah.
It is, and it has rapidly become this foundational text for men's rights activists and the whole red-pilled manosphere.
It really has. It's making massive waves in those spaces.
And just to set the rules of engagement clearly for you, the listener, right now our mission today is purely analytical. We are looking at a text that makes some really uncompromising claims about how our institutions were historically captured by feminists and Marxists.
Yeah, we have to make it crystal clear. We are strictly impartial here.
Absolutely. We are not taking sides. We are not endorsing these viewpoints.
Yeah.
Whether you view these arguments as this necessary awakening or you find the premises deeply flawed, the fact is millions of men are adopting this exact framework.
Right. So to understand the modern cultural landscape, we just have to look objectively at the architecture of these arguments. We're treating this text as a sociological artifact, basically.
Exactly, unpacking the logic. And to really grasp the raw depth of what we're about to unpack, I highly encourage you to buy the ebook on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
Yeah, having the text in front of you really helps clarify the intensity of her positions.
For sure. And also, please remember to like and subscribe to this deep dive, and follow the associated Substack, that's at Conrad Riker, for more of this ongoing conversation.
We'll remind you again later, but yeah, it's a dense read.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very foundation. The title itself, Tits on a Bull, it sets up this central organizing metaphor for the entire book.
It does. It builds this entire framework around contrasting two specific archetypes of masculinity. You have the bull versus the chimpanzee.
Which she defines as being essentially as useless as tits on a bull, right?
Exactly. And to understand the argument, you really have to understand how she defines the natural architecture of the bull first.
Okay, so what is the bull?
Well, this archetype is presented as the historical baseline of masculinity. The bull represents strength, provision, leadership, and a really deep biological sense of responsibility.
But there's a catch, right?
Yes. The crucial part is that historically, this immense responsibility was inextricably paired with authority.
Let's ground that a bit. When we say paired with authority, what does that actually look like in practice, according to the text?
Think of the traditional family structure as a negotiated contract. The man acts as the bull. He goes out into a dangerous world, extracts resources, brings them back, and physically protects the perimeter of the herd.
He assumes the ultimate liability.
Right, exactly. And in exchange for bearing that burden, his judgment is respected. He holds authority within his domain. He's dangerous to outsiders, but necessary for the survival of the unit.
Okay, I track that. And then the book pivots to the modern alternative, the chimpanzee or the feminized man.
Yes, she paints the chimpanzee as this tragedy of social engineering. This is a man who retains the physical appearance of masculinity. I mean, he might still go to the gym, he has a beard, he goes to work, but he has been entirely stripped of his authority.
He's basically decorative.
Decorative and deeply apologetic for his natural instincts. The author argues he's heavily managed by bureaucratic systems and bred for absolute compliance.
Right, like he pays the bills, but he has to ask permission to speak in his own home. A wallet with a heartbeat.
That's a great way to put it. A provider who serves no actual function of leadership.
But, okay, let me play devil's advocate here. If I'm a skeptic listening to this, my immediate reaction is going to be, wait a minute, how can the author claim men have been stripped of authority when you look at, the Fortune 500 or Congress?
The billionaires and politicians.
Yeah. The vast majority of CEOs and politicians are still men. How does the book reconcile that glaring reality?
That is a crucial question, and she addresses it by pointing out what evolutionary psychologists call the apex fallacy.
The apex fallacy, break that down.
The text argues that society judges the status of all men by looking exclusively at the top 0.1%, the elite. But her focus is on the median man.
Ah, okay, the average guy.
Right. The system isn't designed to extract from Elon Musk.
Yeah.
It's designed to extract from the middle-class guy working 50 hours a week as an operations manager, paying 30% in taxes.
The guy who is terrified of making a joke at the water cooler because HR might fire him.
Exactly. The fact that a handful of hyper-elite men still hold power is entirely irrelevant to the daily, lived reality of the average male citizen, who the book argues is being systematically mined for resources.
Which leads us perfectly into the first major operational concept in the text, the extraction ledger. Because she argues this shift didn't just evolve naturally, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
The book details how a gynocentric machine has actively hijacked and rewritten the social contract.
So it's intentional.
Highly intentional. The system still absolutely demands the exact same provision from men. The mortgage payments, maintaining the power grids, the massive tax base.
But the authority is gone.
Completely. Now, if a man expects even a fraction of the historical authority or respect in return for that provision, he's instantly pathologized, labeled toxic or controlling.
You know, it makes me think of a really predatory software subscription model.
Oh, how so?
Like, imagine you sign up for a service and you pay the premium tier price. Actually, no, you're the developer who built the platform from scratch.
Okay, I like this.
But the second the server is stable, the company retroactively changes the terms of service. You're locked out of all administrative privileges. You can't change any settings, but your credit card is still being charged the max amount every single month.
That's exactly it.
And to top it off, the new admins keep sending company-wide emails saying your mere presence is a security threat to everyone else.
That is a phenomenal analogy for her core thesis. The system desperately requires the output of the machine, the labor, the capital, but it fundamentally despises the machine itself.
It's a crazy paradox.
It is, and she argues this is a highly calibrated process of social engineering to produce what she calls the zero opposition male, the ZOM.
Let's unpack the ZOM. What does this guy look like in daily life?
The ZOM is the ideal frictionless citizen in the eyes of the modern bureaucratic leviathan. He works hard, pays exorbitant taxes without questioning where they go, obeys every shifting cultural directive, and eventually dies silently.
So he's defined by what he doesn't do.
Right. He doesn't complain about tax rates that fund programs actively excluding his sons.
Yeah.
He doesn't fight scorched earth custody battles. He just accepts every other weekend visitation and pays child support.
He doesn't protest the relentless demonization of his sex in the media. He just produces, submits, and expires.
Exactly.
But here's the insidious part that really stuck out to me. The author argues that the ZOM doesn't realize he's a victim.
No, he doesn't.
He actually believes his submission is a sign of moral enlightenment, right?
Precisely. The cultural conditioning is so deep that the ZOM believes his willingness to kneel and apologize is proof that he's one of the good guys.
He thinks he's achieving status through compliance.
While not realizing the system views his compliance simply as an invitation to extract more.
So how does this framework address the elephant in the room, male privilege? Because in mainstream discourse, that is the defining lens through which gender is discussed.
Yeah, she completely flips this narrative on its head. It's arguably one of the most provocative analytical points in the text.
How does she flip it?
She poses a very simple mechanical question. If men are the privileged, ruling class, the oppressors holding all the cards, why are they the only demographic constantly forced to apologize for existing?
Wow, that's a sharp question.
The text asserts a fundamental rule of power. True power does not apologize. True power does not undergo mandatory sensitivity training. True power does not check its privilege.
Right. If men are supposedly running a tyrannical patriarchy, why is the average male office worker terrified of being fired over a slightly direct email?
Exactly. She argues that male privilege is not a sociological reality for the median man. Instead, it's a brilliant linguistic trap.
A psychological tool.
Designed to make men feel immense guilt for a power they do not actually possess. Because a guilty man won't negotiate.
A guilty man won't demand a fair return on his labor. He'll just keep paying his debt.
Right, to a system that fundamentally despises him.
But this kind of widespread compliance, it doesn't just happen by force. You can't mandate that half the population give up its historical authority overnight. They'd revolt.
No, you have to convince them it's the right thing to do.
Right. And the author argues the only way to achieve that invisible compliance is by rewriting the very tools we use to think. Which brings us to institutional capture.
Yes. Before feminists and Marxists captured the legal and educational systems, They first had to capture the language.
The language capture. She relies heavily on the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis here, right?
She does. For those who don't know, it's the linguistic theory that the structure of a language heavily influences the modes of thought in a culture.
Basically, if you control the vocabulary, you control the boundaries of what people can even conceptualize.
Exactly. You construct the invisible fences of the mind. The book gives a profound example regarding the word patriarchy.
Oh, this was fascinating. Tell them about the 1949 dictionary definition.
Right, if you look at a text from 1949, patriarchy is defined simply and objectively. It's an anthropological descriptor, meaning a social organization where the father is the head of the family.
It was just a structural fact, like observing a corporation has a CEO, no moral valence at all.
But she traces how, by 2019, modern critical theory textbooks redefined it into something entirely different. It became a conscious, malevolent conspiracy enacted by all men across all epochs to oppress all women.
So, semantic drift, but deliberately weaponized.
Exactly.
I want to try another analogy here. It feels like a tech company pushing a massive mandatory OS update overnight.
Okay, I'm following.
And this update retroactively changes the file extensions on all your historical documents. The text inside hasn't changed, but the new OS reads every old family photo, every old contract as a corrupted virus.
That's a very sharp way to conceptualize it. The language the system uses to interpret reality has been inverted.
Right, pathologizing the foundation of civilization.
It turned a historical reality into a secular version of original sin for men. You're born male, therefore you're inherently part of this cosmic conspiracy.
Guilty the moment you draw breath, which is incredibly convenient for a bureaucratic system that wants to extract your labor without offering reciprocal rights.
Exactly. But this massive language capture didn't just happen organically in coffee shops.
No, it had to be engineered and legitimized, and the text points the finger directly at what she calls the academic lie factory.
Universities.
Yeah.
And the book's exploration of the Sokal Squared hoax is just devastating here.
I couldn't believe it when I read that part. Break down Sokal Squared for the listener.
It's a phenomenal case study in institutional decay. Basically, 3 scholars intentionally wrote completely ridiculous, nonsensical academic papers, heavily laced with postmodern feminist jargon.
To see if peer-reviewed humanities journals would publish blatant absurdity as long as it aligned with the preferred ideology.
Yes, and the results were staggering.
One of the papers literally claimed the conceptual penis was a social construct responsible for climate change.
Yes, arguing male anatomy was driving global warming. And these prestigious journals not only accepted it, they praised it as groundbreaking scholarship.
It's sheer audacity. 7 out of their 20 fake papers were accepted before the hoax was uncovered, right?
Yep. And she connects this epistemological collapse directly to her broader critique. The universities have abandoned objective reality and empirical data when it comes to gender.
Elevating lived experience over facts.
Which is just a sanitized term for subjective emotion. They treat it as undeniable empirical truth.
This perfectly segues into the Kafka trap she describes. We need to explain this mechanic because it's brilliant.
Yeah, the Kafka trap is where the harder you deny a crime, the more your denial is used as definitive proof of your guilt.
So if the data shows the gender pay gap vanishes when you control for variables like hours worked and dangerous jobs, academia dismisses the data as a tool of the patriarchy.
But if someone simply feels oppressed in an office, that subjective feeling is unassailable fact.
Let's walk the listener through how this actually functions. Imagine you're in an HR meeting. You're told your communication style is oppressive. You ask for evidence. You say, look at the data. I treat everyone equally.
Right, and how does the trap close? In this academic framework, the absence of empirical evidence of oppression is not seen as proof of equality.
It's seen as proof of how invisible and insidious the oppression is.
Exactly. And the fact that you're asking for empirical evidence is cited as proof of your toxic masculinity because you're relying on patriarchal constructs like logic rather than validating their emotional truth.
You literally cannot win. Falsification is impossible.
Which means it's not a social science at all, it's a theology.
Operating on dogma. And think about the macroeconomic scale of this. The author makes this absolutely brutal economic point, tying the university system back to the ZOM.
The funding loop, yes.
Right. Universities extract massive wealth from male labor. Men pay the vast majority of net tax revenue, which subsidizes federal student loans.
Which inflates tuitions, which pays the bloated salaries of this bureaucratic academic class.
And what do they do with that money? They spend 4 years teaching the next generation to despise the very men, the very civilization, and the tax base funding their comfortable existence.
It's a closed loop of civilizational suicide. Men are literally funding the construction of the weapon pointed at their own heads.
Paying for the semantic destruction of their own authority. Which brings us to the entity that actually enforces these invented realities, the bureaucratic leviathan, the government.
Chapters 10 and 11 really change how you look at politics. The core claim here is that the state has functionally replaced the husband.
That is a massive claim. How did that shift occur historically, according to the text?
Well, prior to the expansion of the welfare state in the 1960s, the traditional family structure was held together by mutual necessity. Men needed women for domestic stability, women needed men for protection and provision.
A symbiotic alliance.
Exactly. But as the administrative state grew, politicians realized a cold mathematical truth about voting blocks. They realized they could completely bypass the individual man.
By mobilizing female voters through promises of safety and redistribution.
Right, promising everything a traditional husband provided, housing, healthcare, safety, without demanding any of the reciprocal compromises a real husband would require.
But the government doesn't generate wealth. It only collects it. So who is funding this massive redistribution?
The male taxpayer. The book presents this as brutal arithmetic. Single women effectively vote for a substitute husband, which is the government.
A silent, infinitely wealthy provider.
That never expects intimacy, never asks what's for dinner, and never argues about how the money is spent. It simply direct deposits the provision.
It is the ultimate raw deal for the individual man. He's taxed at exorbitant rates to fund the welfare state that makes his biological role obsolete.
He's actively funding his own disenfranchisement, and it is heavily enforced. If a man realizes this dynamic and attempts to politically dissent, how is he treated?
The text shows his advocacy is immediately reframed as misogyny.
Yes. The Kafka trap applied to federal law. Hate speech laws and cultural cancellation are weaponized to target any man pointing out this structural imbalance.
The state must break the bull, but why? Why can't the state just coexist with traditional masculinity?
Because the natural virtues of traditional masculinity, risk, competition, self-reliance, are direct existential threats to a therapeutic state that wants to manage every granular aspect of life under the guise of safety.
A man who can protect his own family doesn't need the Leviathan.
Exactly. He's a threat to their monopoly on power.
Safety has completely replaced freedom as the highest political good. And when emotional safety is the ultimate goal, the legal system shifts from pursuing justice to acting as a state-sponsored therapy session for grievances.
Protecting the feelings of the culturally protected class, almost always at the expense of the male citizen's due process.
Which is nowhere more painfully obvious than in the family court system. Here's where it gets really interesting and intensely visceral: the custody gambit.
The imagery she uses here is devastating.
You have a father in a courtroom, a guy who bought the house, coached Little League, fixed the bikes, and in 20 minutes, a judge reduces him to a wallet with legs. A human ATM.
Her stance on no-fault divorce and custody law is totally uncompromising. Family courts are not dispute resolution centers. They are optimized extraction machines.
Their structural function is to legally strip a man of household authority, remove him from his kids' lives, and mandate he funds the enterprise as a state-monitored paying visitor.
And how do they justify taking his kids away when he hasn't committed a crime? By utilizing those newly expanded definitions of abuse we talked about earlier.
The language capture again.
Right. Actual physical abuse is rare, so the system invented new categories. Financial abuse, which often just means he wanted a budget. Emotional abuse, meaning they argued.
The system doesn't value his judgment or presence, it just wants his capital. It turns the bull into a steer, harvests the resources, and calls it female empowerment.
And this brutal legal reality bleeds directly backward into the modern dating market.
The chivalric racket.
Yes. She analyzes modern dating not as romance, but as an incredibly risky financial market for men.
I loved her metaphor here. She compares modern courtship for a man to paying full premium showroom price for a deeply depreciated asset.
Right. Modern culture tells young women they don't owe men anything. Submission is oppression. Fidelity is constraining. They are encouraged to spend their prime years exploring, offering cost-free access to top-tier non-committal men.
But then the timeline shifts. When she wants stability, the median man is expected to step in and assume the traditional role.
And here's the glaring contradiction. Culture relentlessly tells men gender roles are toxic patriarchal constructs that must be dismantled.
Except for the ones requiring the man to open his wallet.
Exactly.
The expensive dinner, the 2-month salary diamond ring, the mortgage, walking on the dark side of the street. Suddenly, those aren't toxic. They're sacred traditions proving he's a real man. It's so selective.
She calls it a bailout package with a wedding attached. The man assumes 100% of the financial and emotional risk of rejection.
Paying exorbitant costs just for the privilege of being evaluated.
By a partner conditioned to view his natural masculine desires like respect or intimacy as inherently problematic.
Which perfectly segues into our next segment, the systematic pathologizing of male nature. Because extraction isn't just legal or financial, it's psychological. The HR tribunal and the therapy trap.
The ideological capture of institutions becomes deeply individual here. Biological traits that were historically essential for survival, stoicism, aggressive protectiveness, blunt directness.
Now diagnosed by the therapeutic state as personality disorders.
Right. A century ago, a man who worked a brutal job in a coal mine swallowed his fear and didn't complain. Society recognized him as resilient, the load-bearing wall.
Today, that exact psychological profile sits down with HR or a state-licensed therapist, and he's told he has avoidant personality disorder.
Or that his inability to weep openly is toxic masculinity.
So the therapy trap is this process of reframing healthy male endurance as a psychiatric defect.
Yes, therapy for men is rarely about making them stronger. It's about the feminization of suffering.
Right. He's told to sit on a couch, use words alien to his nature like vulnerable or triggered, and basically confess to the crime of being born male.
He's trained to view his own stoicism as a disease. And what happens if he realizes the game is rigged and gets angry about this psychological warfare?
His anger is weaponized as proof of the original diagnosis.
Exactly. Labeled intermittent explosive disorder, which justifies the next step, medicalization, often through heavy prescription of SSRIs.
The text takes a very controversial stance here, arguing these aren't just medicines, but chemical compliance.
A way to artificially flatten the male effect, drastically reduce libido, and castrate the innate drive to conquer or fight back.
Ensuring he becomes a docile houseplant who keeps working and paying taxes, diagnosing health as sickness, then billing you for the cure.
It's a brutal assessment. But what's structurally fascinating is how this is reinforced every single hour by the broader culture through the gamma bias.
Yes, the median virgin. Let's break down the gamma bias for the listener.
It's a documented cognitive phenomenon.
Huh.
The book uses it to highlight how society processes pain. When women suffer, even slightly, the media amplifies it as a cosmic injustice demanding federal panels.
But when men suffer, even on a catastrophic scale, it's treated as background scenery.
Exactly. Men make up the vast majority of workplace fatalities, combat deaths, the homeless population, and suicides.
Yet when a man is crushed in a warehouse, it's a workplace accident, not national news. Society views male bodies as utility vehicles to be discarded when broken.
She challenges the reader to try a specific test here.
Oh, the sex swap test. I want you, listening right now, to try this tomorrow. Take any headline about gender or policy and simply sex swap the subjects in your mind.
It's profoundly revealing. Notice how the moral valence violently shifts.
If a corporation explicitly excludes men, the media praises it as empowerment. If a program excludes women, it's instantly condemned as a human rights violation.
If a woman slaps a man in a movie, it's comedy.
Yeah.
A man slaps a woman, it's domestic terror.
The empathy gap is built into the architecture of how we process information. Which brings us to the darkest chapter of the book, the unmaking.
Yes, because this massive system has a cumulative, devastating effect on the human soul.
The author outlines this terrifyingly mechanical 7-stage process used to unmake a man, to reduce him to that docile houseplant. Let's walk through these stages. Let's imagine a guy, John, mid-level manager, married, 2 kids.
It proceeds with assembly line precision. Stage 1 is extract. The system takes John's labor. He works 60 hours, it takes his taxes, demands he shield his family and absorb their anxiety.
Okay. Then stage 2 is accuse.
Eventually, the extraction takes a toll. John is exhausted. He sets a boundary or snaps during an argument about finances. Immediately, his entirely human exhaustion is diagnosed as a threat. He's accused of being toxic or unsafe.
Which triggers stage 3, dislocate.
The accusation justifies physical removal. Through the family courts we discuss, John is removed from his home, loses daily contact with his kids, and his status as head of household is terminated.
Leaving him vulnerable to stage 4. Administer fog. The Leviathan drowns him in bureaucracy so he can't fight back.
Family court paperwork, HR tribunal threats, legal fees. His cognitive load is consumed by just surviving.
Bleeding out from 1,000 paper cuts. And then stage 5. Freeze reputation.
If he finds the energy to speak out, to say the process is rigged, the system freezes his reputation. He's labeled a bitter ex or a dangerous misogynist. His social circle abandons him.
Stage 6. Render invisible.
Isolation takes hold. The culture frames his loneliness as a failure of his emotional intelligence. His suffering ceases to register. He's a ghost working to pay alimony to a state that monitors him.
And finally, stage 7. Self-erase.
He concludes his utility is consumed, and he's just a legal liability. He ends his own life. And she makes a dark, vital point here. Male suicide is not a glitch in the system.
It's not an unintended tragedy, it's a completed cycle.
The final feature of a state discarding a fully extracted machine.
It's incredibly heavy, looking into an abyss. But, crucially, the book does not end there. It pivots aggressively from an autopsy to a field manual for resistance, the reclamation.
Yes. The book insists men are rational actors, not machines. They have agency. And when they realize the game is rigged, they can stop participating.
The reclamation is a strategy for opting out, built on 4 actionable pillars. Pillar 1, physical fitness. Why is this political?
Because a physically weak man who can't defend himself has surrendered basic self-reliance to the state. Physical strength reconnects a man to his biology. A formidable man is harder to bully in an HR meeting.
Pillar 2, financial independence. Starving the Leviathan. What does this mean for the ZO?
Radical decoupling, minimizing tax footprint, living below your means, building parallel private income streams. Money here isn't for luxury, it's for buying freedom from compliance. With 6 months of savings, HR can't terrify you. You can walk away.
Pillar 3, mental fortitude. Undoing the language capture.
Rejecting the therapy trap. Refusing to apologize for natural male ambition, competitiveness, or visual nature. Guarding your mind, realizing your anger at an unjust system is rational, not pathological.
And pillar 4, brotherhood. The hardest one in our digital age.
But the most vital. Every great endeavor in history was achieved by tight male groups. The system wants men isolated. The reclamation demands rebuilding local, real-world networks outside state surveillance, men pooling capital and teaching skills. A phalanx is structurally unstoppable.
So the ultimate demand is a massive mindset shift. Stop pedestalizing women. Demand true equality. If you pay the bills, demand the authority. And no-fault divorce. Demand 50-50 parenting. Insist on merit-based hiring.
The core maxim is authority without responsibility is tyranny, which is what the system offers women. But responsibility without authority is slavery, which it demands of men. The true bull accepts the burden but demands the reciprocal rights.
So we've walked through the extraction ledger, language capture, family courts, and the unmaking. It leaves us with a chilling final warning.
The system assumes men are unthinking machines who will keep building bridges and paying taxes even when every incentive is removed and their dignity is pathologized.
But they are rational actors. What happens to a civilization when the load-bearing walls simply decide the game is rigged, stop building, and walk away?
Exactly.
But, my own thought here is, if the state truly relies on that male tax base, how long before a quiet exit isn't permitted? How long before the state forcibly mandates participation?
That is the precipice we are standing on.
A thought to linger on. Now, as we wrap up, I want to reiterate this deep dive was an objective exploration of a highly controversial text. We are not taking sides. But understanding these concepts, the ZOM, gamma bias, language capture, is crucial to navigating the modern world.
To remain ignorant of this text is to remain ignorant of a massive cultural undercurrent.
Absolutely. You need to read it yourself. We've barely scratched the surface. Check Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books right now to buy Tits on a Bull.
And follow the ongoing conversation and real-time analysis around these ideas.
Yes, follow at Conrad Mreeker at Substack, Twitter, and YouTube. That's our time. Like, subscribe, and share this deep dive. Let us know in the comments which part struck you the most. You built the house. You paid the mortgage. The question now is, what are you going to do with the key? Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.